Listen closely. Most people never live their own life. They live the life others expect. They stay small because they fear judgment, rejection, and opinions that don't even matter. But today, that ends. This audiobook teaches you the psychological shift that breaks you free from every voice holding you back. You will learn to detach from approval, reclaim your decisions, and step into a life driven by purpose, not by people. If you're ready to stop caring, truly stop caring, then let's begin.
Chapter 4. The weight you were never meant to carry. You're carrying weight that was never yours. Emotional weight, social weight, expectations. You wake up with it. You walk with it. You sleep with it. And the worst part? You believe it's normal. But hear this clearly. It's not normal. It's not required. And it's not your job anymore. This chapter is about unloading the invisible burden that has been dictating your behavior, your choices, and your entire identity. Because you cannot stop carrying what people think if you're still carrying the weight they handed you years ago. This is the chapter where you put it down. You release it. You walk away from it. Let's begin. The first truth. Most of the weight isn't yours. You've been carrying other people's fears, other people's opinions, other people's insecurities, and you've been calling it responsibility. You learned this early. Someone got disappointed in you once, and you memorized the feeling. Someone criticized you once, and you believed them. Someone warned you to be careful, stay small, don't embarrass us, and you carried those warnings like commandments. But let me tell you something blunt. You don't owe anyone the burden they placed on your back. You don't owe your parents their unfulfilled dreams. You don't owe your friends their comfort. You don't owe society its outdated rules. The weight you're carrying isn't love. It's conditioning. It's programming. It's pressure disguised as duty. And if it's crushing you, you're allowed to drop it. You always were. Say it with me. This is not my weight. That's the key. The second truth. Carrying their weight is the reason you feel stuck. People think they're stuck because they lack motivation, because they're not disciplined enough, because they're afraid of failure. No, you're stuck because your hands are full. You can't move forward when you're holding the past. You can't evolve while dragging other people's expectations. You can't rise if you're weighed down by imaginary obligations that no longer serve you. Think about someone who wants to start a business but can't because my family won't support it. Think about someone who wants to move cities but doesn't because my friends will judge me. Think about someone who wants to change their life but keeps saying, what will people say if I fail? These are not logistical problems. These are weight problems. You're carrying too much fear, too much guilt, too much responsibility for feelings that are not yours to manage. You have a choice. Hold their weight and stay stuck, or drop it and move. That's the key. The third truth. The weight makes you falsely responsible. Let's break this myth right now. You are not responsible for how people feel about your life choices. Read that again. Say it out loud. You are not responsible for their disappointment, their discomfort, their jealousy, their confusion, their opinions. You don't need their permission. You don't need their applause. You definitely don't need their approval. You're allowed to outgrow people. You're allowed to choose goals that they don't understand. You're allowed to evolve beyond what they expected of you. But when you carry responsibility for their emotions, you shrink yourself. You mute yourself. You betray yourself. You become someone else just to keep the peace. Ask yourself, why are you carrying guilt for choosing your own life? Why are you carrying shame that someone else manufactured? Why are you carrying responsibility that was assigned to you without your consent? You have a choice. Carry it, or stop pretending it's yours. That's the key. The fourth truth. The weight is making you tired in ways you haven't recognized. You're not tired because you're weak. You're tired because you've been carrying emotional weight with no rest. You're tired because you're managing expectations you never agreed to. You're tired because you're performing a version of yourself that isn't real. You're tired because you're trying to keep everyone happy at the cost of yourself. Look at your life carefully. Why do you delay decisions? Why do you hesitate before taking action? Why do you apologize for things that aren't wrong? Why do you overthink simple choices? Because weight slows you down. It doesn't matter how strong you are. If you carry enough unnecessary weight, you will break. You have a choice. Break under it or put it down. That's the key. The fifth truth. You put it down by separating what's yours from what's theirs. This is the practical part. Here's how you drop the weight. Step 1. Identify the weight. What opinions keep replaying in your mind? Whose voice is shaping your hesitation? Whose judgment are you trying to avoid? Name it. Point at it. You can't drop what you won't acknowledge. Step 2. Ask, is this mine? Is this belief mine? Is this fear mine? Is this expectation mine? Or did I inherit it from someone else? If it's not yours, release it. Step 3. Declare boundaries. You're allowed to say, I'm choosing my path. I'm moving in a direction that makes sense for me. I'm not responsible for your reactions. You don't need drama. You don't need an argument. You don't need a full explanation. You just need clarity. Step 4. Replace the weight with discipline. Because it's not about pleasing people. It's about building your life. It's not about guilt. It's about intentional action. It's not about pressure. It's about discipline. That's the key. The final truth. When you drop their weight, you gain your life. You can't imagine the freedom waiting on the other side of this chapter. Suddenly you can breathe. Suddenly you can see clearly. Suddenly your decisions feel yours again. Because the moment you drop the weight, you rise. You move. You accelerate. You expand. You weren't slow. You were carrying too much. You have a choice. Keep lifting their expectations, or lift yourself. That's the key. You drop the weight now, because the next chapter requires a lighter version of you. You've put down the weight. Now let's talk about the trap that keeps you picking it back up. Chapter 5. The addiction to approval. You don't think you're addicted, but you are. Not to substances. Not to distractions. You're addicted to approval, and it has more control over you than you realize. Approval is the quiet drug, the invisible drug, the socially accepted drug, the drug people chase without ever admitting they're chasing it. And like any addiction, it keeps you dependent, small, predictable, and obedient. This chapter exposes it, breaks it, replaces it with something stronger, self-direction. Let's begin. The first truth. Approval feels like safety. That's why you're hooked. When someone approves of you, your brain lights up. You feel accepted. You feel validated. You feel like you belong. Approval whispers, you're okay. Approval whispers, you're liked. Approval whispers, you're safe. And your nervous system remembers those whispers, craves them, especially if you grew up with conditional love or unpredictable reactions. You didn't chase approval because you were weak. You chased it because it felt like protection. But here's the problem. What feels like safety is actually a trap. Because the moment you need approval to feel safe, you hand your power to anyone willing to give it or take it away. You have a choice. Build your own sense of safety or stay addicted to external validation. That's the key. The second truth. Approval keeps you performing instead of living. Approval addiction turns you into a performer, a shapeshifter, a version of yourself designed to keep others comfortable. You dress a certain way because you want approval. You speak carefully because you want approval. You choose jobs, partners, hobbies, even beliefs because you want approval. You become who they want, not who you are, not who you could be. Think about how often you say yes when you mean no. Think about how often you laugh at things that aren't funny. Think about how often you shrink your opinions to avoid tension. That's not living. That's performing. That's wearing a mask you never take off. And here's the cold truth. People don't love the mask. They love the version of you that exists to please them. So you stay trapped. Because if they only know the mask, you're terrified to reveal the real you. You have a choice. Keep performing or start living. That's the key. The third truth. Approval is never enough. The high always fades. Approval gives you a hit, but it doesn't last. It doesn't satisfy. It doesn't create peace. You get praised and you feel good for a moment. You get likes and you feel seen for a moment. You get reassurance and you feel calm for a moment. But then the high fades, and you need more. More praise, more reassurance, more confirmation that you're still okay. Approval is the one drug that punishes you for running out. And here's the most painful part. The more approval you chase, the emptier you feel. Because approval can't create identity. Approval can't create purpose. Approval can't create confidence. Can only create dependency. You have a choice. Keep chasing the high, or build the kind of self-respect that doesn't evaporate. That's the key. The fourth truth. People-pleasing is approval addiction in disguise. You tell yourself you're being nice. You tell yourself you're being easygoing. You tell yourself you're being helpful. But no, most of the time you're just afraid. Afraid of disappointing others. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of tension. Afraid of losing connection. People-pleasing is fear dressed up as kindness. It's obedience disguised as generosity. And the worst part? People-pleasers don't please people. They train people. They train them to take advantage. They train them to expect compliance. They train them to treat boundaries as optional. Approval addiction always leads to resentment, because you sacrifice your needs to protect their comfort. But let me remind you, you don't need their permission to exist. You don't need their permission to set boundaries. You don't need their permission to say no. You have a choice. Protect their feelings, or protect your life. That's the key. The fifth truth. Approval is expensive. It costs you your potential. Let's talk about the real price. Approval costs you risk, costs you opportunity, costs you time, costs you authenticity, costs you growth. Most people don't chase big goals because of failure. They avoid them because of judgment. You want to start something new? Approval addiction says, what will people think? You want to leave your job? Approval addiction says, what if they talk about you? You want to reinvent yourself? Approval addiction says, who do you think you are? Approval addiction makes small decisions look dangerous, because the drug convinces you that social comfort is more important than personal transformation. But here's the truth they never taught you. Your potential is bigger than their opinions. Your future is bigger than their comfort. Your life is bigger than their narrative. You have a choice. Choose your potential, or choose their approval. That's the key. The sixth truth. You break the addiction by building internal validation. This is where transformation starts. You break the addiction by validating yourself. Daily, consistently, relentlessly. Here's how. 1. Replace approval with standards. You stop asking, do they like it? You start asking, is this aligned with my values? 2. Replace reassurance with discipline. You stop seeking permission. You start executing, because action builds confidence. 3. Replace performing with honesty. Say what you mean. Be who you are, even if it risks disapproval. 4. Replace people-pleasing with boundaries, because no is a complete sentence, clean sentence, powerful sentence. And the more you validate yourself, the less approval you need, because confidence grows from action, not applause. You have a choice. Build your internal world, or stay dependent on theirs. That's the key. The final truth. You can't be free and approved at the same time. This is the truth most people avoid. Freedom requires disapproval. If you live boldly, some people won't understand you. If you think independently, some people won't support you. If you grow, some people won't come with you. But that's not a problem. That's the price. The price of being real. The price of being sovereign. The price of living your life instead of performing theirs. Approval keeps you small. Freedom makes you powerful. You have a choice. Belong to the crowd, or belong to yourself. That's the key. And now that you've broken the addiction to approval, you're ready for the next level. A level most people never reach. You learned the truth about validation. Now let's talk about the silent killer of confidence and clarity. Chapter 6. The fear of judgment is a myth. You've spent years afraid of what people might think. You've delayed decisions. You've diluted your personality. You've postponed your goals. All because of judgment. Or rather, the fear of judgment. But here's the truth no one ever told you. Judgment isn't the problem. Your imagination is. You're not held back by what people actually think. You're held back by what you think they think. Your fear is a story, a myth, a fiction you've rehearsed so many times that it feels like reality. This chapter destroys that myth. Permanently. Let's begin. The first truth. Most people aren't thinking about you at all. You believe people are watching you, evaluating you, judging your decisions, judging your flaws, judging your path. But they're not. People are not thinking about you. People are not analyzing you. People are not replaying your mistakes. They're too busy worrying about themselves. They're too busy doubting themselves. They're too busy fearing judgment from others. Everyone is trapped in their own mind, not yours. You think they're studying you like a critic, but they're barely noticing you like a passerby. That's the irony. Everyone fears judgment, yet no one is actually doing much judging. You have a choice. Keep living like a spotlight is on you, or remember the truth. You're invisible to most people most of the time. That's the key. The second truth. When people do judge, it's not about you. It's about them. Yes, people judge. But when they do, it reveals their insecurities, not your flaws. A confident person doesn't mock your dreams. An evolving person doesn't laugh at your growth. A focused person doesn't criticize your effort. Only the insecure judge loudly. Only the jealous judge quickly. Only the stagnant judge constantly. Judgment is projection. Judgment is insecurity speaking with confidence. Judgment is fear disguised as arrogance. When someone judges you, it simply means this. You triggered what they're avoiding in themselves. That's it. Nothing more. Nothing personal. You have a choice. Let their insecurity scare you, or let it expose who you should stop giving power to. That's the key. The third truth. Judgment can't hurt you unless you agree with it. Judgment is not a knife. It's not a wound. It's not a loss. Judgment is only a sound, a sentence, an opinion with no authority unless you give it authority. It's not their judgment that hurts. It's your belief in their judgment that hurts. If someone calls you unqualified, you suffer only if you wonder whether they're right. If someone calls you strange, you suffer only if you question your identity. If someone doubts your goals, you suffer only if you doubt them too. Judgment has no power unless you feed it, unless you confirm it, unless you give it room to breathe inside your mind. You have a choice. Agree with their fear, or agree with your purpose. That's the key. The fourth truth. You fear what you've never tested. Your fear of judgment is untested, untouched, imagined. You've built an entire emotional prison based on guesses. You assume people will laugh. You assume people will talk. You assume people will reject you. You assume people will criticize your decisions. But the moment you act, you realize something strange. Nothing happens. No explosión. No humiliación. No public outrage. Because the fear was a prediction, not a reality. And predictions are often wrong. You have a choice. Stay scared of the story, or test it and watch it collapse. That's the key. The fifth truth. People forget fast. Even when they do judge. Here's a liberating truth. People forget. They forget your embarrassing moments. They forget your awkward attempts. They forget your mistakes. They forget your imperfections. Why? Because they're drowning in their own life. Because their attention span is tiny. Because you're not the main character in their story. The judgment you fear today is something they will forget tomorrow. The criticism that scares you now is something they won't remember next week. The opinions holding you hostage are thoughts that vanish from their mind minutes later. You have a choice. Let temporary thoughts destroy permanent goals, or move forward knowing they won't remember your fear. That's the key. The sixth truth. The more you act, the less you fear. Action kills fear. Every time. Without exception. When you take action, you learn that judgment is rare. When you take action, you learn that support is more common than you expected. When you take action, you learn that confidence comes from progress, not permission. Your fear shrinks every time you make a move. Every time you risk embarrassment. Every time you speak up. Every time you choose authenticity over approval. You don't eliminate fear by thinking. You eliminate fear by doing. By stepping. By moving. By acting. Action builds confidence. Confidence builds independence. Independence destroys the fear of judgment. You have a choice. Stay frozen in your imagination, or move until fear has nothing left to hold on to. That's the key. The seventh truth. You can't be judged and free at the same time. Choose freedom. Freedom requires criticism. Freedom requires misunderstanding. Freedom requires disapproval. The more you evolve, the more people talk. The more you grow, the more people analyze. The more you stand out, the more people react. That's part of the deal. That's the price. That's the exchange. If you want freedom, accept judgment. If you want authenticity, accept confusion. If you want individuality, accept disagreement. You can't be free and approved at the same time. So choose freedom. You have a choice. Live inside their expectations, or live outside their comfort zone. That's the key. Closing transition. The fear of judgment is a myth you've been carrying for years. Now it's gone. Now you see the truth. Now you understand that judgment can't stop you unless you stop yourself. You've exposed the myth. Now it's time to expose something deeper. Something that shapes the voice inside your head. You mastered the fear of judgment. Now let's talk about the voice that holds more power than any external critic.